from one recent survey that I read, said that they use ChatGPT to find a local top business. The reality is that the results are coming from Google.
Don't keep doing the same things you've been doing all along and think that nothing's going to change.
If they've already been doing the things that they need to rank on Google and you've been doing nothing, there's no such thing as standing still. You're moving backwards and they're moving forward.
Hey everyone, let's clear something up right out of the gate. Google still matters, and it matters a lot. If you want new customers, clients, or patients, you still need to rank well on Google for what your ideal customers are looking for. But here's the problem. It's harder than ever to rank on Google, and even if you do, it's no longer enough. Now people are also searching on AI platforms, social platforms, YouTube, and more. Search hasn't been replaced, it's been expanded. I'm Ian Cantle from Outsource Marketing and Dental Marketing Heroes, and I'm also joined by Jeff Steck from Tylerica Marketing Systems and Ken Tucker and Paul Barthel from Chainscape Web. And today we're going to explore this important topic of fractured search, the new reality of Google, SEO, AI search, optimization, and social search. So welcome, guys.
Hey.
I got to tell you, the fractured search caught my attention. I was like, is that like a fractured fairy tale?
Yeah. It's like a fractured arm.
You remember those? You guys probably aren't old enough to remember those.
Oh, I remember.
All right. So, Ken, I'm going to start with you. Let's start with I think this is where a lot of confusion lies. So there's a lot of noise out there right now about AI, about social media, about new platforms, and some people are even suggesting Google is dead and that it doesn't matter the way it used to. But when you look at actual buyer behavior, especially for local services, how important is Google still today? And should businesses still be investing heavily in ranking there?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the statistics are still, even though statistics tend to trail a little bit behind what's actually happening, the statistics are actually showing that there's actually a little bit of an increase in terms of Google for local searches, in terms of its rank importance, I should say. I think what's interesting is you're starting to see the balkanization of search.
And what do you mean by that?
By that, I mean the fracturing of search. Yeah. You're starting to see different tools that are being used, but right now I think it's still largely experimental. And so here's an example. 45% of people, from one recent survey that I read, said that they use ChatGPT to find a local top business in a community, in a local market. The reality, when we look at the metrics, is that the results are coming from Google. So what I think is happening is people are experimenting on these platforms. People are tired of having to use Google. I mean, there's a lot of Google fatigue out there. And I think people are experimenting to see what else is out there and available. And so they're using other tools. They're using, all the different, channels that you talked about in the intro. But the deciding factor is still Google in their mind, because there's nothing that's come along to replace it yet. And maybe never will, because Google is such a beast. It's got such a stranglehold on this. It is deeply immersed in developing AI and in integrating it into AI search, into the traditional Google-driven search algorithms. AI has been there for a while, and they're making massive investments in it. This is not a game that they want to lose. So right now, it's still the clear winner, unless that you have evidentiary information that shows that you've got a particular market segment that is coming from, from an AI-driven source, Chat, GPT, Perplexity, whatever. You still need to make your investment in Google. It reminds me of the days when cell phones started to become popular, and it's like businesses were like, how much should I optimize for my mobile traffic versus desktop? And when you looked at the back end analytics of where their traffic was coming from, the overwhelming majority of traffic was still coming from desktop, even though all of the studies were saying, 90% of, 75% of all search traffic is coming from mobile devices. Well, you have to always take that into context and look at what type of business do you have? Who are your ideal customers? What are they likely to be using? If they're more tech savvy and they're more experimental, then, maybe Google, it's always a factor. Never, ever, ever ignore Google. But maybe you need to look at, some of these other channels as it relates to your ideal client profiles. And, there are a lot of false metrics out there. Metrics can be made to tell a variety of different stories. But I will tell you flat out, anecdotally, every one of my clients is telling me that they are getting direct feedback from several people on a very regular basis. And it varies because the different businesses are, completely different types of businesses, that people are finding them from ChatGPT. So Google is the king. You'd be insane to ignore it. But as we're going to explore throughout the rest of this episode, it may not be sufficient.
Yeah. And just to clarify that 45% stat, because we were talking about this earlier, just for our listeners. So the 45% the statistic is related to how many people that were surveyed had tried using ChatGPT to search for a local business. So it doesn't mean it's their predominant search tool. It just means that they were asked, have they tried using ChatGPT to find a local business? And 45% said yes.
But I will tell you, because I've been tracking this for the last several months, if you did it 4 months ago, it's completely different now than what it was 4 months ago. And you're much more likely to trust the results just by doing a ChatGPT search for a local business. I don't know how many people are actually trusting that result. I think what's happening is they're doing that alternative search, but then they're verifying it by still going to Google. And so Google still is the authoritative source.
Yeah, and I think we'll get into it later on, but we're going to talk about how different intents of search, so a search intent, actually gravitates towards different tools, because I think that's a really important differentiation, and that talks to the fracturization of this, right?
Yeah. And I think you made a good point also in that you said you looked at things and compared them to 4 months ago and they've changed drastically. I think that's an important point for our audience too, is don't keep doing the same things you've been doing all along and think that nothing's going to change going forward. You're not going to get left behind. You have to be out in front of it. You have to be anticipating. And the good news is a lot of the things you do to show up in traditional search are going to help you with the AI. So since you don't know where your target audience is going to be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months from now, anticipate that at least part of them are going to be going that direction. Do the few extra things you need to take advantage of the other platforms. But yeah, still Google is king. And if you look at Google, what they're doing too, they've got so many different areas on the search page that you can show up in. They have the AI overviews, they have the traditional SEO, they have ads, they have local maps, they have a lot of different places you can show up in. And that's also a point for not, just being complacent and saying, well, we're just going to stick with what's always worked. Yeah, you got to do that because it's what's still working, but get out ahead of it. Think ahead of it a little bit too, is my point.
Yeah, Jeff, you said something that I want to make sure we're clear on. You said that, and this is the way you said it, maybe you misspoke or maybe I misunderstood, but I think what you said is doing what you've always done to show up on Google search will help you on AI search results. I think
the angle I was going is the traditional things still matter, but it's more. You got to add to it as well.
Yeah, so it's like doing all of the stuff to help you show up in the AI results really still helps you, and actually helps you tremendously showing up on the traditional results.
Yeah.
The big question, or the big thing I see, guys, related to this, and I'd be curious what you see as well, is that 90% of the, and I'm making up that stat, so don't quote me on it, but a large percentage of the businesses that come through my doors as prospects or clients do not have any kind of best practice Google strategy historically. So like there's no chance they're going to show up on AI search either. If they don't get the foundational elements done that are going to help you show up on Google, you're not going to show up on AI search either. Like it's impossible because the elements that will help you are part now of the Google, search AI as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the term a Google strategy or Google search, not SEO, because I think SEO puts things in too confined of a box for how rapidly things are changing and evolving today.
I just changed the acronym to Search Everywhere Optimization because I'm tired of new acronyms showing up every other day. In fact, another one popped up today, and I'm like, just stop with the acronyms, people. It just confuses people.
Yeah. So you're going to like repurpose the TLA?
No,
three-letter acronym.
SEO, man. It's simple. People understand what it means. It's adapted now to search everywhere, right? It fits for me. So you guys don't need to use it, but you can pay me royalties if you wish.
Might want to copyright that, trademark it.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Paul, next question's for you. So if Google still matters, like we think it does, and if businesses should still be investing in it, why does it feel like it's getting harder and harder to actually win there? And what are the real forces making ranking on Google more difficult today than it was a few years ago?
Competition, Google's AI overviews. And, when we talk about AI search, if you use Google, you're using AI, okay? I mean, Google's whole search algorithm is driven by AI. You're just not going directly into an AI tool, but there are things that work for Google, and go into this a little bit later, that will not help you rank with the LLMs or the AI platforms. It goes back to what Jeff said, you have to do more because now you're feeding two different search algorithms, if you will. But I think one of the things we've seen is that a lot of small businesses are kind of at a point where they realize, and it's driven by AI, but it's not because of AI. So you talked about a Google strategy, and for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, they've basically done nothing while their competitors have. And now they're in such a hole, they realize they have to do something. And it does still start with Google, but now there's more moving pieces that you have to deal with. And so there's just less real estate, if you will. There's more competition, and like the Google AI overviews, that always shows up right there at the top before anything local shows up, because Google is trying to keep you in their ecosystem.
Yeah. And then for some businesses, the LSA ads, local service ads pop up, right? So that's where they're Google's making some money. And then of course in the maps, you have a sponsored ad in there. So Google's making some money. And then they keep chasing more and more ads. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to step back. COVID was a paradigm shift in the way people had to conduct business, and the way consumers had to purchase, right? And so there was a huge shift in people having to put more effort online there, and it's just driven the competition. And you see it at all levels: search rankings, organically, paid ads. Google is 25% more on average across the set of keywords, the whole set of keywords, than it was last year. And so everything is getting harder and more complex. And
for paid ads, right? 25%.
Well, yeah, but I mean, also for search. I mean, it's just, because you've got competitors that, they're like, okay, we tried this online thing and it worked pretty well. We're going to double down on it. And so now they got it finally. And now they're dependent on it, and they're deeply invested in it. Whereas, we've got people who still largely have tried to survive with word of mouth, and that's good for a while. But word of mouth is not a consistent, steady stream. It's not a predictable system, And so yeah, it is harder. And sadly, those people who haven't taken action before, you got a deeper hole you got to dig yourself out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is something that if you're one of these small businesses that for the past few years have thought that you could get by without investing in any of this stuff. And now you realize AI is coming along. You still have to start with Google, like I said earlier. But now, if your competitors have been steadily investing in this, you got a problem. Because if they've already been doing the things that they need to rank on Google, and they've already started to do the things they need to rank with the AI and LLMs, and you've been doing nothing, there's no such thing as standing still. You're moving backwards and they're moving forward.
Yeah, your business doesn't live in a bubble, right? A lot of people, think like, I'll focus on my game. You hear this all the time in sports, right? We're just going to focus on our game and we'll worry about the competition. But that doesn't work in professional sports, and nor does it work in a competitive marketplace either, right? You have to take into account your competition and where you are in relation to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jeff, from what you're seeing on the front lines working with clients, how is this actually showing up? Are you seeing businesses working harder on SEO, but not necessarily getting the same results they used to?
It's relative. So if you're not working harder on SEO and more to the point, the extensions of the additional things you need to be doing in the era of things becoming more complex and more broad-based, then you're definitely falling behind and not getting the results you used to. So if you then start putting a little more effort into it, now you're into a race, right? If you put a little more effort into it and somebody else puts a lot more effort into it, who's going to win faster? It doesn't mean you're not going to make gains. It means you may not make the huge leaps and bounds that you want. So there's always this, well, how much effort am I putting in and what's it costing me versus what am I really getting out of it? And I think the part that often falls behind in that is like well, what if you don't do it? If you just turn it off, then, where are you going to wind up? What would happen if your leads dried up tomorrow because you're not keeping up with the world? And that's not just the technologies or how you optimize. It's even just how you present your business and what you talk about. If you don't keep up with what people are looking for, what they want, and what they want to get out of working with you.
Hey,
so
Jeff,
yeah, there's
just to ask you a quick question. Have you ever had a client actually say that to you? Like, hey, what's going to happen if I stop, working with you and focusing on SEO, and then they do stop? And have you tracked results with that?
We've had a few that have come back after we've told them something and they've declined to do it. And then I've said, yeah, okay, don't tell me I told you so. I said, no, I wouldn't do that. But I don't know if I would say the question. I think most people understand that there is a level of effort involved. The question comes up every once in a while, well, do we need to do this or should we keep doing this? What would happen if we don't? But I think people at the end of the day, most of them realize that it's a competitive world and things are rapidly changing and they kind of get that if they don't keep up with it, they're going to fall behind. But what does that look like? There's that different level of, well, I want to put in a little more effort, and then you still go down a little bit because everyone else is putting in more effort, or I want to focus on this 1 or 2 new technologies and everyone else is focusing on 5. There's still a lot of that. So how does that manifest itself? It can manifest itself by your traffic or your results plateauing or even dropping off. If you're focusing on the wrong things and the wrong technologies, then you could have vanity metrics that look good, but the real bottom line rubber meets the road methods. Did people come in my shop? Did they call the shop? Did they book an appointment? If you're getting more traffic, but you're not getting the leads that match up to it, that's a surefire indicator. At the same time, we have seen very definitely with AI and AI algorithms and Google's algorithm changes and that intent that we talked about earlier, we have seen some pretty dramatic on some clients, some pretty dramatic drops in overall traffic on their website, but the quality of the traffic they're getting matches up better with what they're doing and the steps they want people to take toward becoming a client or a customer. So again, vanity metrics, just because your traffic drops off doesn't mean it's a bad thing if the traffic you're retaining is the traffic you want, or even you're getting more of the traffic you want, relatively speaking. So you want to look at, what's changing, I think is my best advice. What's changing? And then think about why is it changing? And is that a good thing or a bad thing? And if it's a bad thing, how do we counter it? So all the metrics that we typically talk about in terms of, conversions and leads and cost per leads and all those things still apply. You still need to be monitored. The sad truth is there's just now more factors in it. There's more places to look. There's more places to pull data from, and the attribution is always tough. That last attribution of how do they really become a customer? Where do they start the journey? It gets harder with more sources in there. But I think, again, going back to the notion of does Google matter? Yes, it absolutely does. Is the overall search marketplace getting fractured? Yes, it absolutely is. And that doesn't mean that you can just ignore part of it, though, because you gotta play, and you gotta pay to play, whether it's with your own time and effort or whether it's working with somebody else. It does take effort and energy, but if it didn't, then every business would be just multimillionaires for little effort. It doesn't work that way, right? We gotta reap what we sow.
Everything of value takes investment, right?
Yep.
Relationships, business, everything. Yeah.
Could be time, could be money. Yep.
All right. So Ken, let's build on that because this is where things I think really start to shift. If it's harder to rank on Google, but businesses are still investing in it, what happens when they actually do rank? And why is it that even businesses that are doing well on Google are still struggling to grow in the way that they expect?
Yeah. So, at the time of this recording, we're basically at war. AI is threatening and scaring the daylights out of everybody in terms of their jobs. And the economy is struggling. Costs are higher than they have been, and so you could rank well, your traffic can still be the same level that it was or even increasing, but you still may not be getting people to place orders or book appointments for a whole lot of things that are outside of the control of what you can control to help rank online. I had a conversation with a customer. They sell very high-end product, very high-end. And that's, their target population is exactly the audience that may be largely impacted by job replacement through AI in a very near term. And so, it's like we're monitoring it. You're not dropping off in rankings. Your traffic is still strong. It's still actually slightly increasing, which was a good sign. But that's not enough. That's not enough for people to actually make that decision. The other thing that I think is really interesting is a lot of businesses spend a lot of money to rank well, and then they don't answer the damn phone. So, it's like if you just put a system in place, the good news is you don't have to rank at the top. If you've got a competitor that won't answer the phone, just rank second, because you'll be that next phone call that'll be placed. Because when people call and they don't get that answer, most people, statistics are overwhelming. 80% of people who haven't worked with a business will not leave a voicemail message. They'll just call the next business. Unless it's super urgent, very, very urgent. But then even then, you're going to want to talk to somebody who will solve that problem for you right away. It's all about, we're talking about layers. Jeff talked about, the fact that, and maybe it was Paul, I think it was Paul, just talking about, there's a lot of content out there. There's saturation, there's frustration. We've talked about for the entire life of this podcast, the importance of a multi-touch journey. And if you're not doing omni-channel marketing to where, and the other thing that's really difficult is what can you assign and attribute the actual final action that somebody takes to call your business, to fill out a form on your website, to place that order. That attribution is actually quite difficult. You can do a lot of things to improve that, but if you're not investing a lot of money in a digital marketing program, you're not investing in the tool set that gives you the best attribution. So you don't really know if people found you on Google, but then 3 months later, they did a search on Facebook and, they saw an ad pop up from your business and they're like, oh, yeah. And they say that, they found you on Facebook. Well, actually, they found you on Google, but Facebook maybe was the thing that prompted them because maybe it was more timely that they took action. So you gotta think things through. And again, it's all relevant to your ideal customers. What are they doing? What is going on in their lives? And what is the nature of your business? If you're an emergency service, that's completely different than if somebody has the opportunity to think about making a buying decision over the course of months or even years. So you have to map that out, and you have to look at all of the channels that make sense to do that. And right now, and I'm sure Paul will talk a lot more about this because I hear him talk about this all the time, you've got to be found everywhere online right now because the new link building is actually brand mentions. Link building is still important. It will always be important, but being mentioned, as a matter of fact, if you want to be found by AI doesn't work the same way that Google does in terms of discovery. If you want your website and your content to be found, you can submit a sitemap, and that can initiate the Google bots to come and crawl your website. AI doesn't look for your website. There's no trigger to say, hey, come look at my website and learn about me. You've got to use other places online to make the AI want to come and learn about you and understand about you. So while Google is still important and you should submit that sitemap, and Google is absolutely using AI in search, if you're starting to see people who are absolutely using ChatGPT, it's a different mechanism to get your content and your website found that way. So you got to understand that. Also, just because you rank first doesn't mean that you're the most trustworthy business. There's not a one-to-one correlation between do you have the most Google reviews and the highest Google Composite rating versus the top rating on Google search. It just doesn't work that way, and we've all seen it. But it's a very important factor. So trust is huge. Really to summarize it all, Google gets you seen, but it's not necessarily what is going to let people choose you. Again, you could have a great website that ranks really well, but it converts really poorly because of the way the homepage is designed. The call to actions are buried or if they're at all. You don't have a phone number in your top navigation, which so many businesses don't have, which I do not understand. You don't have, any kind of a chat feature or things like that. You're missing conversion opportunities. So you spend a lot of money to get that Google ranking, and you're just pissing it away.
And I'll ask Paul the next question because it leaps off of what you just said, Ken, but that important distinction between being seen versus chosen. So, Paul, if a business is relying only on Google, what parts of the customer journey are they completely missing out on right now?
Everything that's not Google. and I only say that half facetiously, because I'll try not to go too far into the weeds here. It's going to kind of build on a lot of things that Ken said, is that Google is still important, but what has changed is how Google decides whether or not you're trustworthy. Because it used to be that you could put some content on your website and some content on your social media channels, and you were pretty much good, especially if you didn't have a lot of strong competition. What has changed with Google and how the LLMs operate is Google will proactively go look for the business or the website that they think best matches the customer's query. And they will proactively crawl the web and look for websites. That's how their core algorithm works. But what has changed with Google, and like Ken said, the LLMs won't do that. They need a different trigger. I'll get into that in a minute. What has changed with Google is how they judge authority and trust. And how they're doing that now is and this goes back to what Ken said about brand mentions, they want to see your company, your business, your brand mentioned on websites and platforms that are outside of your control. Because the idea is if these other authority websites and platforms are mentioning your business, then that's going to go a long way in establishing trust and authority, because no one's going to put on their website, "We suck, give us a call." They're not going to do that. I mean,
and if you do, we have a
Well, it
fix.
depends on the nature of the business, I suppose.
so that's just not going to happen.
That's true.
So,
they could be like a vacuum sucking machine company, that.
Well, yeah, if you sell vacuum cleaners, that might be a good tagline. "We suck really good, give us a call."
Okay.
But so Google wants to see your brand mentioned outside of what you control. The LLMs, that's the only way they're going to find you, is by seeing your brand mentions outside of platforms that you have no control over. And this is something that small businesses really cannot do for themselves. I mean, could they do it themselves? Yes. Is it going to be cost prohibitive? Yes. Because we can do it at an affordable price because of scale. We pay X amount of dollars for a tool that we can use and spread that cost across multiple clients. Sure, a small local business could go buy that same tool, but they can't, but they're eating the entire cost of that tool.
And the tool
to drive the tool.
Yes, the tool doesn't magically do it, right? You need
exactly. And then you have to learn how to do this. And it's not just generating the content, it's distributing that content. And one thing I was thinking about the other day about traditional SEO and what Google recommends from a content perspective is we all used to do, and still do to a certain extent, I'm sure, is a content gap analysis. I don't know how necessary that is anymore if you do, because Google says write content so comprehensive that there's basically nothing left to write about that topic. If you do that, you're not going to have a content gap. And that's what Google wants to see. Google wants to see that, and they want to see that content distributed across platforms that you don't control. And so just because of the way Google is determining whether or not you're trustworthy has changed so much, that in itself makes it harder to rank on Google.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or did I lose everybody?
No, it totally makes sense. I've run into it a few times in my agency years here, where I've had businesses that for whatever reason they are very I'm trying to think of the generous word for that. They're very particular about the words they use to express the type of service that they offer. And they've created their own dialect, essentially, and they won't use the most common terms to express what they do. I've seen this with dog teeth cleaning companies. I've seen these with CPAs. I've run into it more times than I thought I ever would. But the biggest impact is just what you're talking about. There's a content gap because Google's like, well, it's nice that you use these terms, but I can't make the connection between the term you're using and what people are actually searching for, because it's your own term that you created. And I've seen that a few times, and it's
and if the average person doesn't know to look for that, guess what? It's like if someone doesn't know you exist, how are they going to find you?
Yeah. Cool. Jeff, when you look at lead flow and customer behavior today, because a lot of this has to do with the behavior of people, right? We're talking about how people use these tools to find local businesses. Are you seeing that Google is still involved, but no longer the only driver? I think that's what I'm hearing, right? And in other words, are businesses still getting leads from Google, but losing influence elsewhere on the journey?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say that Google ever was the only driver. I think it was dominant for a long time. Like a lot of new things, they get a lot of people's attention. Everyone goes, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. You should do it. And then boom, everyone's going over there. Social media. I think when social media came up, Facebook goes, oh, this is amazing. Boom, everyone goes over there. And then they move on. So things shift around. Google has been in the fortunate position of continuing to reinvent search and drive themselves forward. And they are no doubt a dominant player. And that's why we're saying you should not ignore them at your own peril. But I don't know that they ever were the only thing. They are one, and arguably a big one, and for some businesses bigger than others, but they are one touch point along or area of touch points along the customer journey. They are not the entire customer journey. People have to know to look for what you do on Google. They have to be, especially in businesses that are kind of inventing. They're people wouldn't think on their own to search for them. They have to learn about them. They have to know about them first. You may need to run some ads to get out there and get in public and say, hey, this is a really cool new thing you might want to check out. And people will go, oh, yeah, let me check that out. And then they won't remember who you are. So then they go do a Google search, right? So if you're relying solely on Google, that's the wrong approach, even though they are big. It's just one part of the journey. You got to think about where it fits in. But the top of the funnel, we talk a lot about the funnel, the know, like, trust, the awareness, interest, and desire and action, those whole different models of the customer journey flow. You got to think about where people are using different tools and different platforms along the way. And then how do you fit into that ecosystem? So Google's going to be an important part when people are actively looking for something, but before they're actively looking for them, it might be advertising. Once they've found you and they're comparing you with other things, then they may shift to other trust platforms, ratings, directories where they can look up your reputation, look up your history. For some businesses and some spaces, the Better Business Bureau listings are still important. I haven't heard anyone tell me they've started there or they've made a sole decision on a BBB listing in a very, very long time. But it's that entire body of work and everything that comes together. So yeah, Google's absolutely involved, but they're not the only driver. And they play different roles at different places throughout the customer journey.
And if I could add something real quick that I meant to mention earlier, but something you said reminded me is Bing matters again because of their relationship with ChatGPT. I mean, there's a long time you could just kind of ignore Bing places and you'd be okay but now if people are doing searches on these LLMs, they tend to draw, not exclusively, but in large part, they'll draw from Bing and Bing and Bing places matter now.
And by the way, I think we mentioned this before, you can synchronize your Google business profile over to Bing Places. Yes. So there's no reason not to have a Bing Place listing.
When I was preparing some of these questions, I just for nostalgic purposes, I looked back at what the old search engines were before Google really became dominant. So some of these will make you laugh, but you remember Yahoo, Alta Vista?
What happened to Alta Vista? That's what I want to use.
Ask Jeeves,
yeah.
AOL Search, Netscape Search, CompuServe, like all of those were in a battle, right, to win our eyeballs. And Google worked really, really hard to create a search platform that gave us what we want, right? Which is we want to find the best results possible for questions we're asking, businesses we're looking for. And so that's how Google became dominant, right? It wasn't by fluke, it was by hard work, and they've earned our trust as consumers. But they have to keep it, right? Where human behavior is changing now with AI. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and what's going to be interesting is, I'm not really going to go into that survey or that study that Bright Local did, but it went from like 45% from 6% in 1 year, and you can pick that apart. But it tends to be demographic driven, and so as these young people start, moving into the workspace, and some of them are, and start gaining buying power, it's going to be interesting to see how Google adapts to that. I mean, I'm sure they will. They're not stupid, but as more and more people, because younger people tend to use AI search more, and as they move in and they became, because people get old and died, and as they get older, it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah. And, I'm just reminding people like that are listening that or watching, like it's still the wild, wild west of AI search, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If anybody thinks, ChatGPT right now is the dominant player because it just grabs so much market share early, but And I don't think anybody right now would say like they're going to be the winner in a year, 2 years, 3 years. Like nobody knows because everybody's just all of the AIs are just leapfrogging each other right now, right? They bring out
they're
a new
being challenged,
version.
no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. So Ken, this is where we introduce the bigger idea because we're not saying Google is gone. We're saying the environment around it has expanded. Can you walk us through what the modern search landscape actually looks like today and where businesses need to be thinking beyond just Google?
Yeah, I mean, it's really about layers and also intent of what people are searching for. If they're doing informational searches, more and more people are starting to use, AI maybe to do that, and that may lead to finding out, oh my God, I didn't even know this business existed, and then you go and you look it up on Google and find out. That business exists, or through social media discovery. I mean, and this has actually been, it's been around for a long time. The way people travel, when we look at the buyer's journey. I mean, if we use the marketing hourglass from duct tape, for example, know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. We always look at, well, what does it take to be known? The first objective is just to get discovered. And in some cases, that could be running an ad. It could be doing a direct mail piece. It could be, social media. It could be, that they find you on Google. But you've got to look at the buyer's journey, and you've got to look at the intention every step of the way of the buyer's journey. What are they wanting to get out of it? And we don't control it. How can you guide it? And so, that's why this omni-channel approach has always been very important. You may have somebody who came to a landing page that's not even on your website that you've spent a lot of money building up on SEO because you drove them there through an ad. You got their email address. You send an email as part of a marketing campaign or an email campaign to get them, because they took action and maybe you got on your list through that landing page. They don't even know really that your website exists. They've never had any reason to go explore it. They were happy with what they got and they moved on. But now with an email, you actually drive them back to the website if you give them some interesting reason why to. And so, email is not related to search. Social people are doing searches for social on social platforms for businesses. I've seen people speculating that that's going to be on the increase. I'm not sure why they are saying that. I don't really see that for the types of businesses that I work with in the majority. But it's still, you shouldn't ignore it. There are some people who are going to go do a search for a chiropractor on Facebook, and if they don't do a search, they're going to put in on Facebook. They're going to go to a local community group and say, hey, anybody have any recommendation for a great chiropractor? And so somebody, and then, what always happens is people are going to go check you out. They're going to go to your website. And if they can find your Google profile, they're going to go there as well because they want to look at the reviews and they want to see how trustworthy you are. So it's a multi-layered approach. You got to put content in the places where people are already going to be using that fit your ideal client profiles, and more, that list of places that people are going to and using and tool sets is expanding rapidly. We're in an era right now where it's the Wild West, and there's a lot of expansion about places that people can go start to do these things all throughout their buyer's journey. That's not great news for small businesses, but small businesses who get that and realize it and make an investment on it are going to be way ahead of the game. It's always been that way. It's more important than ever, and that's why when Paul was talking about the distribution, distribution does two things. One is it builds that trust level but it also gets content distributed in platforms and in content types that get you more visible to a lot more people that normally would never even know you exist. So even as a local business, and this has always been the case with SEO, you know, you get a lot of value from high quality links of other websites or other websites from different places mentioning your business just in terms of helping you uplift in search. So a lot of small businesses may not really want to acknowledge that, but it's absolutely the case that it's critical that you can't just think, even if your game is only local search, you can't just think about your little local region.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to hit on one thing you kind of mentioned, which is people using social media for search, because it almost seems counterintuitive. Why would you go to social media to search them? I think this goes back to, was it last week or the week before, our topic on short form videos, is because, especially the younger generation, they're so into videos and learning things through videos and watching videos, being entertained by videos, that if you have that short form video content on your social media, then you can get found through that content on the social media and catch people's attention. So it kind of goes back to the notion of having a variety of formats, and placements for different members, again, of your target audience. If your target audience isn't on TikTok, don't worry about TikTok. But if it is, you better be there. But I think, yeah, it's again, part of that bigger, broader ecosystem. What are all the places people get information? What are all the points along the buyer's journey that we need to tap into?
Look, I realize budgets are not infinite, right? I mean, everybody has to manage to the budget that they have, but you really do have to think about omni-channel and reach of your content. And so, working with a partner, a small business can do this by themselves, but it is extremely difficult and extremely costly. You got to work with a partner who knows how to get you in front of on these channels and get the content distribution in the right authoritative places. It's easy to go sign up for a free press release tool that'll give you free distribution to a whole bunch of websites that mean absolutely nothing to any other website on the planet. But it sounds like a great idea and it looks pretty cool and it's a good ego stroke because you're like, oh, wow, look at this. I'm on 300 different websites, but those websites make no impact whatsoever in terms of search. It's just purely a vanity play. That's the sad thing. And then there are a lot of charlatans who will sell solutions like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one thing really stood out from what you guys were saying right there is that, and we've talked about this forever, but people lose sight of this for some reason with technology. And I don't know, I think it's the sparkly lights, right? Like, whoa, the shiny object syndrome. And it's that, like, the whole thing starts with who your ideal customer, clients, or patients are. Like, if you don't know those, it doesn't matter what platform you're on, you're going to create a message that doesn't resonate with people. And the chances are very good that you'll also be on the wrong platform, right? You'll be investing in the wrong place where those ideal clients aren't even spending time. So you don't want to do that for sure. You need to know who you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
So, Paul, when you look at those layers, maps, social, reviews, AI, Google, where do you think business owners have the biggest blind spots right now? Where are they just not paying attention, but probably should be?
Well, probably Bing, like we talked about earlier, or Bing Places. And like Jess said, if you have a Google business profile, you can sync that to your Bing Places, and any changes you make on Google will be reflected. So it's not like it's a lot of extra work. It's just initially setting it up. Apple Maps, I suppose, although they tend to drive you off a cliff if you follow their directions, but I don't think you can ignore Apple Maps. And the LLMs, even though it's not where Google is, I don't think you can ignore them because it's not going to go away. And I think small businesses are aware of that. I think they just don't know where to start. They don't know how to start, and they're afraid of getting burned because it's something brand new. So maybe learn a little bit about it and then work with someone. And social, I think most small business are on social, but maybe they're not on the right social platform. Maybe they're not on all of the ones that they should be on. Like if you're an interior designer and you don't have a Pinterest account, that's a bad decision. Go get a Pinterest account. And reviews, I think small businesses know the importance of reviews, but they don't have a mechanism in place to proactively try and get reviews. And even few or hardly any of them ever actually respond to reviews.
Yeah.
And I think those are some of the biggest things that a small business can do, especially if they're not doing any of that right now.
Yeah. And another thing is, even if you do have a mechanism to go ask for reviews, that mechanism is interrupting people. It's catching them when life is happening. And, there are better ways to get reviews. And there's no better way to get a review than asking in person and giving them an easy way to do that in person. Not always possible, but if you send an email or an SMS message, you're doing what everybody else is doing. You're probably hitting them when they're driving their kids to soccer practice or, whatever. Life is happening, and it's a favor and an interruption that people have to actually stop what they're doing and make a commitment to go write a review. So you need to find several different ways and strategies to get reviews, but reviews are critical right now. I mean, they are the training ground for a lot of AI to know about what your business is and does and what people think about it and how they trust it.
Yeah. And there's always nuances to it, right? Like, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I certainly have, where if you ask for reviews within your place of business and people are attached to your Wi-Fi, sometimes those reviews can actually get kicked out by Google automatically just because it's seeing multiple reviews from the same IP address. So there are nuances to this that a professional can help you just navigate a little bit. But yeah, if you don't ask, you're not going to get. And that human to human connection is what really gets people to leave reviews, because they're trying to help you ultimately, right? They understand the value, and you've expressed the value to them and how much it would mean to you. And most people are more than happy to do that.
If you don't interrupt them.
Yeah. Although sometimes the interruptive ones work too. They're just not as good as asking in person, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I want to just do a quick plug for websites too, because Ian, as you mentioned in one of our recent podcasts, it is the only property that you own and control, but it's also the central source of truth for your business. It's where you can control your narrative, your story, how you interact with clients and customers. So while all the other things matter, they're also going to be plugged into and driven off of that. And ultimately, they may take people back to that. So I think, with all these other bright, shiny objects that are out there and things to worry about, reviews, absolutely got to do them. AI, got to be thinking about it. Social media, video short, got to be thinking about it. Still don't lose sight of the website and the importance of the website, and both driving the technologies and being the place where people come back to.
Yeah. Now, there's a study there's actually a set of recommendations that Google put out. Now, this is 4 or 5 years ago, so this could have changed. But even then, Google said people are going to trust your website more than your Google business profile, even though that's where you're capturing reviews. That was from Google in terms of how you optimize your Google business profile. Basically what they're saying is don't neglect your website, because studies that they were seeing still show that people still ultimately trust what's on your website more than what's on your profile, your Google profile.
Yeah, and just
love to see
as
an updated study on that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's changed at all, right? It's just, people, if you're not educating and informing people, if you're not creating a message that resonates with the ideal client, customer, patient you're trying to attract, like no other platform is going to do that, right? Like you can try to, interrupt them on social media. You can try to do some interesting things, but your website is really, everybody understands that is the online presence of your business. It's essentially your brick and mortar business online. And if you don't have that, you're hurting yourself. I was just going to mention that, two of the newer things that a lot of businesses don't get and a lot of web designers don't get. And that's why web designers are not usually the best people to hire, directly to do a website today, is because they're not SEO experts, but they often leave out things like schema and FAQs, and FAQs in the proper format with schema formatting that helps not just Google, but the LLMs to understand these things about your business. So
it's almost that left brain, right brain thing. You need both, right? A lot of websites are built by graphics designers, creative directors. They have an incredible look and feel, but they fall down on the technical side. And then there's a lot of websites that may have great technicals, but they look like crap. So it's that you need both.
And I think we're going into just a season where we're going to see just a trove of really great looking websites with really poor SEO, because there's so many tools out there right now that will help you build a website using AI. And I've played with them, and man, like, they can create some beautiful, beautiful websites. But first of all, they may not convert very well. But secondly, it doesn't build SEO into them very well, right? Like, it's so, I think that's something people really need to understand and pay attention to, because it could, if you decide to use an AI system to build your website without the SEO components, you're going to lose to your competition who has done that stuff.
And you mentioned schema. The LLMs almost cannot understand your website without schema, because it goes back to the LLMs do things different than the search engines like Google. They're two different things. And schema has become more important because Google's algorithm has gotten pretty good at understanding your website without schema. I'm not saying you shouldn't implement it. You always should have implemented it. But the LLMs absolutely depend on it to a degree that Google does not.
Yeah. And guys, I know that we've come up to the top of the hour. I want to give Jeff the last question, just because it creates an equalization of questions to guides. And I had a lot more questions. We didn't get through them. Maybe we'll do another episode on the other kind of 2.0 of this discussion. But Jeff, we've talked a little bit about this, but this is really where it clicks for people, I think, is when they understand that each of these platforms plays or can play a different role. Can you break down how these different channels actually fit into the customer journey and decision-making process?
Yeah. So I'll kind of flip that around and say, you got to start by understanding the customer journey, the buyer journey, and the paths that people will take, where they're getting their information from, and then, meet them where they are and then guide them down the path to doing business with you. So there's going to be different platforms, different, even within the Google environment, there's different types of searches. There's different content that you're going to have. There's different places you can show up on the search page, depending on, where people's intent lies. So kind of understanding that buyer's journey and then meeting them where they are, whether they're at the very top of the funnel, just they don't even really know what they're looking for yet, and your job is to help them figure it out and guide them, or whether they're close to making a decision and they just want confirmation that they're making the right decision. And oh, by the way, you might be able to intercept that decision and tilt it toward you. Understanding that buyer's journey and being able to plug into it so that you can guide your ideal clients and prospects and patients, as you said. Again, make sure I have a nod to the Dell heroes. Guide them down that path, because that's what really matters, right? You want to meet people where they are, develop that know, like, and trust, build that relationship with them as much as you can online. Plug the human element into it when you can, and move them toward doing business with you. So, there's no one technology that's a silver bullet. Google still is pretty dominant. So you plug into the ecosystem, the different platforms where you can, and you use them appropriately to get that job done. And then I think I mentioned it earlier, the website still very central. It drives a lot of the other things. You could almost make the argument, even if somebody didn't visit your website, just the website content that's driving all the other things they are visiting is important. But ultimately, you're probably going to bring them back to your website at some point, and they're going to, take an action there to truly connect with you. but yeah, that central source of truth is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And this would be an entirely different topic, but it just occurred to me that like our listeners might not know, but you know how Google tries to monetize everything, right? Through ads in different spots. The chat GPT and some of the AI search bots and LLMs, like they're trying to do this too. Chat GPT is running a pilot right now. They've started early February where they're trying to charge now to get greater exposure. So all of, everything's changing, and it behooves you to have an expert on your side to help you navigate this ever changing world. Any last thoughts, guys?
Well,
No,
yeah, I mean, as you said at the top of the show, Google is still important. It's still the place where we're seeing the majority of results happening for businesses who are ranking well, and so you can't ignore it, and you shouldn't ignore it. Regardless of the desire that maybe some people have about being overly reliant on Google or not trusting, the reality is all of these are big players, right? I mean, every one of the companies behind AI is a massive company, and they all have their own hidden agendas. We're never going to find the ideal noble thing that's going to be the purest thing that's out there. They're all going to have their biases, and they're all going to be, whether intentionally or not, they're going to be shaping and shifting what people are finding from searches. So do what you can to control it, and that starts with Google. And I think it's really important to just make sure that Google alone is not enough. You have to add the layers on top of it to make sense based on the competition level that you're facing with your business, the market, the type of products and services that you sell and offer, and who those people are that are your likely ideal customers. And you've got to factor all that in. It really hasn't changed much. It's just there's a lot more to do than there ever has been before.
Yep.
My parting thought is that complacency is your enemy. Just because it worked 5 years ago or last year, or doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow, or doesn't mean it's going to work next year. Things are rapidly changing. There's a lot of moving parts in the businesses that really pull ahead. We talked about that in one of the questions. The ones that pull ahead and see the results of their efforts are going to be the ones that are staying out in front of the curve, not trying to catch up with it or keep even with it. And that unfortunately does mean there's a lot to manage, a lot of complexity. But the good news is there's a lot of people around that can help too.
Just to add something, and Paul, jump in after this, but if you want to, it's interesting that the message in predominantly, on all the channels right now is that AI is making it easier for people to get in front of people, right? Because content creation has become a little bit easier if you know what you're doing, but it actually hasn't made it any easier. It's just what you're saying. Like I'm just trying to echo what you guys are saying and rephrase it a little bit, because there's so much noise out there that AI is making it easier for your business to have visibility. And that's absolutely not true. It's become this fractured mess that you need to really be super strategic about and laser focused, or your business is going to fall behind the competition for sure.
Yeah.
Paul, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I said for a long time SEO was a marathon, not a sprint, and that's more true now than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but if you've spent the last 3-4 years, whatever it is, doing nothing, and now you're realizing you need to do something, you have a long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
and don't just say, oh, well, what I didn't do 3 years ago is all I need to do now.
Right.
Don't dust off that old strategy and try and implement it. Like dig in again and figure out what's needed in today's market and today's conditions.
Awesome, guys. So bottom line is, don't stop working on Google, double down on it, but start expanding strategically beyond it, right? You have to, be where people are looking right now to get in front of them, know who your ideal clients are and understand where they are, and plan for the future and prepare for the future and build for the future. So guys, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insights. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for joining us today. And remember to smash that subscribe button. I don't see Ken smashing the subscribe button.
Ken's like
sorry.
Twitch going on here.
Yeah. He's twitchy today. That's okay. You can also gently trigger the subscribe button. And be sure to share this episode with someone you know that would benefit from it. And until next week, folks, keep calm and mark it on.